Well, good morning, everybody. To get us started today, I wanted to look at a surface temperature map as we prepare for this brief but intense Arctic invasion here. So at about 7:40 this morning Central Time, we were watching temperatures in parts of Montana and parts of the Canadian Prairie in North Dakota already dipping down there in that -10 to -20 range. And this will be just the very beginning, like I said, of the Arctic air that's going to be coming through the midsection of the country. The all hazards weather map this morning will likely change considerably over the next couple of days. We do have several states stretching from parts of the northern plains all the way to the eastern Corn Belt that are under winter storm watch. I expect a lot of this to, especially through this area, to flip over to possibly a blizzard warning. We'll kind of explain why in a few moments. But the rest of these colors you see here, from the northern plains all the way down to the southern plains, this is all an area where we do have either a wind chill watch, a wind chill advisory, or a wind chill warning that is in place. And again, this stretches back into the northwest where some of that colder air will be getting through into parts of the Columbia Basin out of this. And there is a winter storm watch that's been issued for this part of Idaho. So this is a pretty dynamic system, is moving considerably faster than the one we talked about last week. And it will have some very cold air, as we've been talking about, on its northern edge. The high-res NAM is picking up well on where this is going to go. So let's start off at 8 o'clock this morning. You're looking at a map that shows surface temperature. This is not anomalies, but surface temperatures. And if you can see it, those are actually the wind barbs, so telling you the wind direction and strength. So what we're going to watch here as we go through the day on Tuesday will be the advancement of the cold air Tuesday night into Wednesday morning coming through parts of Montana. So this is the real significant push we're watching. And then that colder air, as we discussed, is going to have a very difficult time trying to get over the Rocky Mountains. So you can see the hard push against the mountains in the front range here, but not advancing over the top. We'll then watch throughout the day here on Wednesday, getting into early Thursday morning for the position of the front. So this is midnight on Thursday, so 12 a.m. Thursday morning. We can see it slicing through parts of Minnesota, Iowa, clipping to Missouri, coming right through the heart of Kansas and back here toward the Panhandles. As we play this forward, that front will rapidly move to the south. And what we're concerned about with this front is that the temperatures behind it may drop off 40 or more degrees very quickly. We'll get a flash freeze event that will happen out of this. And this will be the main front that will set up the low that's going to develop here over parts of the eastern Corn Belt and the eastern Great Lakes later this week that could potentially deliver the blizzard conditions. So if I show you very, very early in the morning on the 23rd what the surface wind field will look like, you can see the front will advance all the way through the Gulf of Mexico. We'll be stretching right here through parts of Michigan and Indiana and Ohio, down to parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, slipping right through parts of Alabama here, going toward New Orleans. So that's where the main frontal boundary will be. The winds behind this will be quite fierce, and that's one of the things we need to talk about here. The National Weather Service will tell you that the criteria they use to issue a blizzard boils down to 4 things. You got to have snow. Doesn't matter if it's falling or if it's already on the ground, but there needs to be snow, of course. There's no amount that is necessary. You've got to have winds that are going to be at least 35 miles an hour. You need to have visibility being reduced to a quarter mile or less. And all 3 of those things need to be forecast to occur for at least 3 hours. So we're going to watch here the winds with this system advancing through Thursday into Friday. And you can see there's going to be a large area in the midsection of the country where we will either be having snow falling or there will already be snow on the ground, where we're going to be seeing these winds in this 30 to 50 plus mile an hour range. I would not be surprised if we see winds that are gusting up to almost 70 miles an hour at times, especially coming off the lakes here or approaching them like you see in Ohio and Indiana. Now, these will be brief, but they could hit those speeds, which means the wind chills could be in that -30 to -70 degree Fahrenheit range as this comes through. So this is going to be a very tough system to endure. Now, one of the things we've been focusing a lot on this week is going to be the position of the shortwave. And just to give you the latest data, where we have the largest kind of ribbon of vorticity coming around the Ohio River Valley means that we should expect the greatest height falls and the quickest drop in pressure to be here, according to the European model. That's been a bit of an eastward trend over the last couple of days, and the GFS has picked up on that as well. So very similar positioning here on where we think the low is going to be. There is still some important ensemble spread. So remember, the ECMWF is a 51-member ensemble. It still has, now this is out there for Thursday evening, a large area over which those ensemble members could possibly put the low pressure center. And one of the things I want to remind you is, let's just say the low is right here in Indiana, right over Indianapolis. you would find the heaviest snow corridor initially setting up along where I'm drawing this arrow right in through here, about 150 miles to the north and west of the low. And then as the low progresses into Michigan, you're going to watch that same band of heavy snow progress with it. So that's the trick with these mature winter cyclones, is knowing about 150 miles to the northwest of the low is where you tend to get your biggest snow bands. But in this case, unlike a week ago, this system's moving, and it's moving quickly. So that's going to really change where we have our best chances for the heaviest snow. So let's keep doing what we've been doing. This is the latest comparison between the GFS on the left and the European on the right. And let's get this up to speed. So here we are. This is this morning, playing through the day on Tuesday. There's Wednesday morning, getting into Wednesday evening. So we watched the system come out of Idaho, where we got the winter storm watches, and now spreading that snow along the front that's advancing here by Wednesday evening. It's very well addressed in both models, very consistent. See that? So then we see that front dive to the south. We develop the low over the panhandles in both models. The front advances to the east, and we're going to watch, again, that rapid flash freeze event happening as the front passes through. So you notice the European model goes from rain in the eastern Corn Belt to a switch over to ice very quickly here, like at this point in Illinois, and then snow on the back side. So we're going to watch that progress. This is 6 p.m. Thursday evening, getting into early Friday morning, Friday midday, Friday evening, getting into the overnight hours. So see how quickly that system moves its way to Ontario and Quebec versus the previous system, which spent almost 9 days, I think, going across the country. So as we notice here, even after this system leaves, because it's going to be quickly occluding very deep low pressure, high pressure on the backside, we will see very strong winds lasting for at least 48, maybe 60 hours in throughout the Great Lakes states in the Midwest with this system. I would also like to point out that the GFS is still flirting with, if I take you back here, it is still flirting with trying to set record high pressure in parts of Montana. Mean sea level pressure here is expected to be 1064. We'll see if that occurs. The European model's not so aggressive on that. So what about total snowfall? I'm leaning more towards this morning's ECMWF run on snowfall totals. This will be a very difficult snowfall total to measure, given how strong the winds will be in this area. The blowing and drifting will be considerable, so travel will be very treacherous here as soon as that front passes. At some point, Wednesday here, Thursday into Illinois, and onward to the eastern Corn Belt and Great Lakes. We will get some lake enhancement from this as well, and some of the lake effect snow bands, in addition to the snow from the synoptic system, could top 10 to 15 inches, maybe even more than that. Okay, if we just broaden this out, let's broaden this out and get a multi-model perspective. This is what we're expecting through the next 5 days from the European model on total snowfall. Remember, I make a color break at 4 inches into the blues, and this was the latest from the GFS. So we can kind of go back and forth here. The GFS always does this for some reason. As the front comes through, it likes to do a quick transition. So each one of these little bands you see here is the front passing in the coldest time of day. That's why you see that. I think at this point I would rely a bit more on what the European model is saying. So we'll kind of leave this here for a second. Now, the next part of this is going to be how cold the temperatures are going to be. So let's look at those minimum temperatures. That's what's reflected in the number. The color shading represents the anomaly. So here's Tuesday morning's lows. We've already experienced these. This is Wednesday, getting into Thursday. And on Thursday, we could hit minus 15 in Spokane, minus 10 in Yakima, getting quite cold in parts of the northern edge of the Willamette Valley here. But the coldest air will be in Montana, stretching through Wyoming, throughout the northern plains down into Nebraska. Now, we're going to watch the rapid advancement from Thursday into Friday of that cold air. Look how far it makes it. So this is Friday morning's lows, getting into Saturday morning on Christmas Eve, and this is Sunday morning's low temperatures. So we're going to watch here on Christmas Day a lot of folks waking up to minus 10 to minus 15 in the western Corn Belt. But we need to talk about how quickly we're going to transition out of this, because we're noticing again in the forecast toward the end of this month, the Pacific jet is expected to extend. We talked about it in the in-depth report last night. From Asia all the way across the Pacific, no major break being shown here in the flow, no big ridges going into Alaska, and not even a high amplitude pattern here over Greenland at this point. This is a lot of zonal flow. So the models are responding to that by increasing the likelihood of precipitation from the west. which is great. We did not see this happening a year ago. And also, as these systems pull across the country, they're going to be able to draw some deep moisture out of the Gulf. I'm tending to lean more toward the day 8 through 14 forecast from the from the GFS versus the ECMWF, a little bit drier here. But one thing we do notice out of this is that the Arctic air that's coming through will start to modify once we get toward the very end of the month. So it's already beginning in the west, and then as we bring in more zonal flow with the lack of big ridges over Greenland or Alaska, much of the country will see maybe some milder days with the start of the new year. This doesn't mean warm, it just means mild compared to normal. The last thing to discuss is the latest update on South America. The models did trend a bit drier in Argentina for this weekend's rains. They were pushing them more into Buenos Aires and then up toward the Andes rather than putting them into like Cordoba and Santa Fe, in through this region along the Paraná River. They also trended a bit drier from Mato Grosso do Sul through Paraná and Rio Grande do Sul, but kept the heavy rains from, this is Minas Gerais, Goiás, Tocantins, and then here into Mato Grosso. So we certainly see the very wet finish for the crop here in the north. So just want to keep you up to speed on that. All right, stay tuned to the weather.gov. I think that's going to be a great resource to just get the clearest information on this. I've received dozens of emails just talking about stuff that's flying around on Facebook, and maybe some local meteorologists that are really hyping up the storm. It is significant, but I would just be aware of those, 40-inch snowfall forecasts that sometimes are getting passed around. We'll stick with kind of what the major modeling centers are suggesting here, okay? I appreciate your attention. I'll talk to you in the morning. Thanks.